The video had been viewed 47 million times in 6 hours. Victor Hockney, on one knee in the city's most exclusive restaurant, holding a 5-carat diamond ring, while Anina Cugin covered her mouth in practiced shock. Champagne. Applause. A kiss that looked like a magazine cover. And in the corner of the frame, barely visible but impossible to miss once you noticed, a timestamp. 8:47 p.m. The exact moment his wife, Ilsa, was being cut open on an emergency operating table, fighting for her life and the life of their unborn son. "Turn it off," General Louis Cugin said quietly, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd commanded thousands of soldiers. "I've seen enough." His aide closed the laptop, but the image remained burned into the general's mind. His daughter, Anina, accepting a proposal from a married man whose pregnant wife was dying. His daughter, smiling like she'd won the lottery, while a woman who'd done nothing wrong bled out in surgery. His daughter, who had lied to him for 6 months about being pregnant herself. The general stood at the window of his study, looking out over the city that had once feared and respected him. Retired now for 5 years, but still connected, still powerful, still capable of destroying a man so completely that he'd wish he'd never been born. "Sir," his aide said carefully, "the hospital called. Mrs. Hockney is out of surgery. She and the baby survived." "Good," the general said. "I'd hate for Victor Hockney to escape justice through widowhood." He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts, and began making calls. By morning, Victor Hockney's perfect life would begin to crumble. And by the end of the week, the entire nation would understand what happened when you humiliated a general's daughter and thought you'd gotten away with it. But first, the general needed to understand exactly how this had happened. How his intelligent, accomplished daughter had become the mistress in a scandal that would define her for the rest of her life. Wait, stop right there. Asterisk before we dive into this story. And trust me, you cannot look away from what's about to happen because General Cugin is planning revenge so surgical, so devastating, that it will make headlines for years. I need to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments right now. And listen, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, what are you doing? This story has betrayal, conspiracy, public destruction, and a military general who's about to teach the world what real consequences look like. Hit that subscribe button immediately because you do not want to miss a single second of this. I'm serious. Subscribe now. Because the twist about why Anina became Victor's mistress? You're not ready for it. Let's go back to where this nightmare actually started. 6 months earlier, Ilsa Hockney discovered she was pregnant on the same day she discovered her husband's affair. The pregnancy test was positive. 2 pink lines that made her heart soar with joy after 3 years of trying. 3 miscarriages. 3 devastating losses that had nearly broken her marriage. She'd planned to tell Victor that evening over dinner. Had made reservations at the restaurant where he'd proposed. Had even bought a tiny pair of baby shoes to present with the news. But when she'd arrived at his office to surprise him with lunch, she'd heard voices from inside. "You promised you'd leave her." A woman's voice. Young, sultry, familiar somehow. "I will, after the Riverside deal closes. I need her father's connections for the permits." Victor's voice. Casual. Callous. "Once I have the property, I'll file for divorce. I promise, baby." "You've been saying that for 4 months. And I mean it. Ilsa is just business now. You're the one I love." The words had hit Ilsa like physical blows. She'd stood outside that door, one hand on her still flat stomach, and felt her entire world reconstruct itself. Her marriage was a lie. Her husband was cheating, and she was pregnant with a child whose father didn't love her. She'd left the office without announcing herself, canceled the dinner reservation, hid the baby shoes in the back of her closet, and she'd started investigating. Victor Hockney, 34, real estate developer worth an estimated $200 million. Self-made, charismatic, beloved by the business community. Her husband of 5 years, who'd swept her off her feet with grand gestures and promises of forever, who was now sleeping with someone young enough to be in college. Ilse hired a private investigator. Within 2 weeks, she had everything: photos of Victor and his mistress at hotels, credit card statements showing expensive gifts, text messages that made Ilse's stomach turn, and a name: Anina Kujan, 24 years old, junior marketing executive at a firm Victor's company contracted with, daughter of retired General Louis Kujan. The general. Ilse had heard of him, everyone had. Legendary military commander, hero of 3 international conflicts, a man known for his strategic brilliance and absolute intolerance for dishonor. Did he know his daughter was sleeping with a married man? Ilse kept the pregnancy secret, told no one, not even her best friend, because she was forming a plan, and that plan required perfect timing. She would wait until the baby was far enough along to be safe. Then she would file for divorce, take half of everything Victor owned, and disappear to raise her child in peace. But her body had other plans. The night everything collapsed, it started with cramping. Sharp, sudden pain that doubled Ilse over while she was making dinner. "Victor!" she called out, but he wasn't home. Again. Out with Anina, probably, while his pregnant wife, pregnant though he still didn't know, suffered alone. The pain intensified. Ilse felt wetness between her legs, looked down, and saw blood. Too much blood. She managed to call emergency services before collapsing. The last thing she remembered was a paramedic asking, "Ma'am, how far along are you?" And her whispered response, 7 months. 7 months pregnant, and her husband had no idea. The hospital called Victor 3 times before he answered. He was at Luminosa, the 5-star restaurant on the waterfront, at a table he'd reserved weeks in advance. Champagne chilling in a bucket, a ring box in his pocket. Tonight was the night he was finally going to propose to Anina properly. Not as a mistress, but as his future wife. He'd tell her his plan. File for divorce from Ilse, weather the scandal, emerge on the other side free to marry the woman he actually loved. "Mr. Hockney, this is City General Hospital. Your wife has been admitted. She's in critical condition?" "I'm in the middle of something," Victor said. "Can this wait?" "Sir, she's being prepped for emergency surgery. She's 7 months pregnant and experiencing—" Victor hung up. 7 months pregnant? Impossible. Ilse would have told him. The nurse must have the wrong patient. He silenced his phone and focused on what mattered. Anina, sitting across from him in a red dress that made her look like a goddess. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Perfect," Victor lied. "Now, I have something important to ask you." He stood, pulled out the ring box, got down on one knee. The restaurant went silent. Phones came out. Someone started recording. "Anina Kujan," Victor said, his voice carrying across the room. "You are the love of my life. Will you marry me?" Anina's face lit up. "Yes. Yes, of course." The restaurant erupted in applause. Strangers cheered. Victor slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her like they were the only 2 people in the world. In the back corner of the restaurant, Seated at a table hidden by a decorative screen, General Louis Cugin watched his daughter accept a proposal from a married man whose wife was currently dying. The general had known about the affair for 3 months, had known his daughter was involved with Victor Hockney, had known the man was married. He'd been waiting for Anina to come to her senses, to end it, to remember the values he'd raised her with. Instead, she'd accepted his ring. The general pulled out his phone, made a single call, and said 2 words, "Start digging." By the time Victor and Anina left the restaurant, wrapped in each other's arms and blissfully unaware, the general's team had already begun compiling every detail of Victor Hockney's life, every business deal, every hidden account, every lie and secret and vulnerability. And the general had made a decision. Victor Hockney was going to pay. Not with money, not with apologies, with everything. At the hospital, Ilse woke to the sound of machines beeping and a doctor's gentle voice. "Mrs. Hockney? Can you hear me?" She tried to speak, but her throat was raw from intubation. "Don't try to talk. You've been through emergency surgery. Placental abruption. Your placenta separated from the uterine wall. We had to deliver immediately." The doctor paused. "Your son was born at 29 weeks. He's in the NICU, small but fighting. We're cautiously optimistic." "A son." She had a son. "Where's my husband?" Ilse managed to rasp out. The doctor's expression flickered. "We've been trying to reach him. He hasn't responded to our calls. Because he was busy proposing to his mistress." Ilse didn't know that yet, but she would. Because a nurse, scrolling through social media during her break, had seen the video, had recognized the name Victor Hockney, had checked the timestamp against the surgical records, and had quietly sent the video to Ilse's phone. When Ilse was strong enough to check her messages, when she saw her husband on one knee at the exact moment she was being cut open to save their son's life, something fundamental broke inside her. Not her heart. Her heart had broken months ago when she'd discovered the affair. This was something else, something harder, something that would not heal or forgive or forget. This was rage. Pure, cristalline, unstoppable rage. And when General Louis Cugin walked into her hospital room 12 hours later, introduced himself as Anina's father, and asked if she'd like to discuss mutual interests in seeing justice served, Ilse looked at the legendary military commander and smiled for the first time in months. "General," she said, her voice still weak but her eyes blazing. "I'm listening." The general pulled up a chair. "My daughter has made a terrible mistake. Your husband has betrayed both our families. And I believe it's time we taught him what happens when you declare war on the wrong people." He opened a folder, spread documents across her hospital bed. "This is everything I've found in the last 12 hours. Offshore accounts, fraudulent loans, bribes to city officials. Your husband isn't just a cheater, Mrs. Hockney. He's a criminal." Ilse looked at the evidence, at the paper trail of Victor's corruption, and felt something settle inside her. "What do you propose?" she asked. The general's smile was cold and sharp as a blade. "Totale destruction. Public, permanent, and so thoroughly documented that he'll never recover." He leaned forward. "But I'll need your help. Will you work with me?" Ilse thought of her son, fighting for life in an incubator. Thought of Victor, celebrating his engagement while his family suffered. Thought of 3 years of lies and loneliness and loving a man who saw her as nothing more than a business asset. "Yes," she said, "let's destroy him." And in that moment, an alliance was formed that would shake the entire city. The wife and the father, both betrayed, both furious, both ready for war. What do you think is going to happen to Victor? Drop your predictions in the comments. And if you're hooked on this story, if you need to see how the General and Ilsa take Victor down, then smash that subscribe button because this is only the beginning. General Louis Cugin had not cried since his wife died 20 years ago. But sitting in the NICU, watching his daughter's lover's son fight for every breath through a tangle of tubes and wires, he felt tears burn behind his eyes. "He's beautiful," the general said quietly. Ilsa sat in a wheelchair beside him, her body still recovering from emergency surgery, her eyes fixed on the tiny infant in the incubator. 3 pounds, 2 ounces. The doctors say the next 48 hours are critical. What's his name? I haven't named him yet. Ilsa's voice was hollow. I keep thinking Victor should be here for that. That despite everything, a father should help name his son. She laughed bitterly. But Victor doesn't even know he exists. The general was quiet for a moment. My wife and I tried for 10 years to have a child. 10 years of treatments, disappointments, prayers. We'd given up hope when Anina finally came. He looked at Ilsa. I know what it's like to want a child so desperately that it consumes you. So I understand why you kept this pregnancy secret, even after you discovered the affair. I was gathering evidence for the divorce, Ilsa said. I needed time, leverage, a clean exit strategy. But my body had other plans. Tell me about yourself, the general said. I've read the investigative reports, but I want to hear it from you. Who is Ilsa Hockney? Ilsa was silent for a long moment, watching her son's chest rise and fall with mechanical assistance. I grew up in foster care, she said finally. My parents died in a house fire when I was 6. No relatives willing to take me. I spent 12 years moving between homes, never quite belonging anywhere. She touched the glass of the incubator. I promised myself that if I ever had children, they'd never feel that kind of abandonment. They'd know every single day that they were wanted. Is that why you married Victor? I married Victor because he made me feel safe, Ilsa said. He was successful, stable, confident. He pursued me like I was the only woman in the world. After a lifetime of being unwanted, someone actually choosing me felt like a miracle. When did it change? About a year after the wedding. Ilsa's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was recounting someone else's story. He started working late, traveling more, being distant. I told myself it was stress from building his business, that he still loved me, he was just busy. But you knew, the general said. I suspected. But suspecting and knowing are different things. Ilsa looked at him. You're a military man. You understand strategic thinking. I knew that confronting Victor without evidence would be pointless. He'd deny it, I'd look paranoid, and he'd just get better at hiding. So I waited, gathered proof, prepared for the war I knew was coming. Smart, the general said approvingly. Not smart enough to avoid falling in love with him in the first place, Ilsa said. The general smiled sadly. Love makes fools of us all, even generals. A nurse approached, checked the monitors, made notes on a chart. He's doing well, she said to Ilsa. Heart rate stable, oxygen levels improving. He's a fighter. After she left, Ilsa said, Tell me about Anina. Help me understand how the daughter of a man like you ends up as the other woman. The general's expression hardened. That's a question I've been asking myself for 3 months. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos, and showed Ilsa a picture of a young Anina in military dress uniform. This was taken 6 years ago. She'd just graduated top of her class from the military academy. I was so proud. He scrolled to another image. Anina receiving an award. Marketing Executive of the Year 3 years ago. 21 years old and already making a name for herself. What happened? Ilsa asked. Victor Hockney happened, the general said. His company contracted with her firm 18 months ago. She was assigned to his account, and he targeted her deliberately. Ilsa's eyes narrowed. Targeted? The general pulled out a folder, handed it to Ilsa. Inside were printed emails, text messages, a timeline. Victor researched her before they ever met, the general said. Knew she was my daughter. Knew I had connections in city government, military contracts, political influence. He pursued Anina as part of a business strategy. Ilsa read through the documents, her face growing pale. He needed your approval for the military housing development. Exactly. A $2 billion project that required federal and military cooperation. Having the general's daughter on his arm would have opened doors. The general's voice was cold. But Anina didn't know that. She thought he loved her. Thought she was special. Did you try to stop it? I confronted her 4 months ago. Told her he was married, that he was using her. She accused me of trying to control her life, of not trusting her judgment. The general's voice broke slightly. We haven't spoken since. And now, he gestured to the phone where the proposal video was paused. Now she's engaged to a man who was too busy celebrating to answer calls about his dying wife. Ilsa finished. They sat in silence, watching the baby breathe. General, Ilsa said finally, why are you really doing this? It's not just about punishing Victor or protecting Anina. What do you want? The general looked at her, and Ilsa saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Grief. I want my daughter back, he said quietly. The girl who believed in honor and integrity and doing the right thing. The woman who would never have accepted a ring from a married man whose wife was in surgery. He closed his eyes. Victor Hockney stole that from me. He corrupted my daughter, turned her into someone I don't recognize. And I want him to pay for that. Revenge won't bring her back, Ilsa said. No, the general agreed. But showing her exactly what kind of man Victor really is might. If I can prove he never loved her, that she was just a pawn in his business games, maybe she'll wake up. Maybe I'll get my daughter back. Ilsa understood then. This wasn't just about punishing Victor. It was about saving Anina. What if she doesn't wake up? Ilsa asked. What if you show her everything and she still chooses him? Then I'll have lost her forever, the general said. But at least I'll know I tried. Across the city, in Victor's penthouse apartment, Anina Cugin stood at the window watching the sunrise, the engagement ring heavy on her finger. She should have been happy. She'd just gotten engaged to the man she loved. But something felt wrong. The hospital calls. Victor had finally checked his voicemail around 2 a.m. after they'd returned from celebrating their engagement. 5 messages from City General, each one more urgent than the last. Your wife is in critical condition. Emergency surgery in progress. Please call back immediately. Victor had gone white, had mumbled something about a mistake, had said he'd handle it in the morning. But Anina had seen his face, had seen the guilt and fear flash across his features before he'd masked them with casual dismissal. Victor, she'd said carefully, is Ilsa okay? She's fine. Probably just being dramatic to get my attention. He'd pulled Anina close. Don't worry about her. Tonight is about us. But Anina was worried. because she'd met Ilse once, 6 months ago, before the affair had started. At a charity gala where Victor had introduced his wife with all the warmth of someone introducing a business colleague. Ilse had been kind, gracious, had complimented Anina's work, had asked intelligent questions about her career, had shown no sign of the dramatic, attention-seeking woman Victor described. Anina pulled out her phone, hesitated, then searched for Ilse's name. The first result was a news article posted 2 hours ago. Real estate mogul's wife in critical condition after emergency childbirth. Anina's blood ran cold. Childbirth. Ilse had been pregnant. 7 months pregnant, according to the article, which meant she'd been pregnant the entire time Anina and Victor had been together. The phone slipped from Anina's hands. Victor emerged from the bedroom, already dressed in an expensive suit. His phone pressed to his ear. Don't care about the optics, just manage it. Tell the press it was a private medical matter. No comment on the timeline. He hung up, saw Anina's face, and froze. You knew, Anina said. You knew she was pregnant. Anina, you proposed to me while your pregnant wife was in surgery. Her voice was rising. While she was fighting for her life, you were putting a ring on my finger. She didn't tell me she was pregnant, Victor said quickly. I had no idea. The article says 7 months. Anina's hands were shaking. 7 months, Victor. She didn't just get pregnant. She's been carrying your child our entire relationship. Our relationship started 8 months ago. Exactly, Anina shouted. You were sleeping with me while your wife was pregnant, and you never thought to mention that minor detail. Because it doesn't matter. Victor crossed to her, tried to take her hands, but she jerked away. Ilse and I were over long before you and I started. The pregnancy was probably a last-ditch attempt to save the marriage. It changes nothing about us. It changes everything, Anina said. I'm not the other woman who helped you leave a failing marriage. I'm the mistress who slept with a man whose wife was pregnant. You're the woman I love. Stop. Anina held up her hand. Just stop. I need to think. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Where are you going? Victor demanded. To the hospital, Anina said, to see if your wife is alive, and to meet the child you apparently forgot you were having. Anina, that's a terrible idea. Why? She turned to face him. If Ilse really is as dramatic and manipulative as you say, if she really did get pregnant to trap you, then I have nothing to fear, right? She's the villain in this story, not me. Victor's expression shifted. She'll try to turn you against me. Or maybe she'll tell me the truth, Anina said. Something you've apparently been avoiding. She left before Victor could stop her, her heart pounding, the ring heavy on her finger like a shackle. She didn't know what she'd find at City General Hospital. Didn't know if this was the moment her whole world would collapse or the moment she'd finally understand the man she'd agreed to marry. But she knew, with sudden certainty, that her father had been right. She'd made a terrible mistake, and it was time to face the consequences. When Anina arrived at the hospital, she found her father sitting in the NICU waiting room beside a woman in a wheelchair. The woman was pale, exhausted, still wearing a hospital gown, but her eyes were sharp and clear as they met Anina's. You must be Anina, Ilse said quietly.
I'm Ilse,
Victor's wife. Anina felt her throat close. I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were pregnant. He never told me. He never told me about you either, Ilse said. But we both know now. The general stood. Anina, we need to talk. I don't want to hear it, Dad. Anina's voice was shaking. I know you think I made a mistake, but Victor loves me. He's going to divorce her and we're going to... He's not going to divorce her, the general interrupted. And he doesn't love you. He never did. That's not true. He researched you before you ever met, Ilsa said, her voice eerily calm. Targeted you because you're the general's daughter. Used you to gain access to military contracts and political connections. She pulled out a folder, identical to the one the general had shown her. This is evidence. Emails, strategy documents, proof that you were always part of a business plan. Anina took the folder with trembling hands. Read the first page, then the second, then the third. Each one felt like a knife between her ribs. No, she whispered. This is fake. You made this up to... To what? Ilsa asked. To get my husband back? Anina, I don't want him back. I want him destroyed. She gestured to the NICU behind the glass. See that baby? The one fighting for his life? That's Victor's son. The son he doesn't know exists because he was too busy planning his proposal to you. Anina looked through the glass at the tiny infant covered in tubes and wires. Meet your fiancé's child, Ilsa said. The legitimate heir to everything Victor owns. Victor arrived at the hospital 48 hours after his son was born. He walked through the NICU with flowers and a carefully practiced expression of concern, preparing explanations about missed calls and business emergencies. The staff directed him to a private consultation room instead of Ilsa's bedside. Mr. Hockney, please sit, Dr. Rachel Mosley said. I'd like to see my wife. In a moment. Dr. Mosley's voice was professional but cold. First, we need to discuss your son's condition and the circumstances surrounding his birth. Victor sat, impatient. I was told he's stable. He is. But his mother nearly died getting him here. Dr. Mosley opened a file. Your wife suffered a complete placental abruption. She lost nearly half her blood volume. If she'd been alone 5 minutes longer, both she and your son would be dead. The words hung in the air. Where were you, Mr. Hockney? Dr. Mosley asked. We called you 14 times. I was in a meeting. My phone was off. At 8:47 p.m. on a Saturday night? Victor's jaw tightened. Is there a point to this interrogation? Dr. Mosley turned her laptop around. The proposal video played on the screen. Victor's face drained of color. That's you, Dr. Mosley said flatly. Proposing to another woman at the exact moment your wife was being cut open to save your child. The timestamp matches our surgical records to the second. I can explain. Don't bother. Dr. Mosley closed the laptop. I'm not here to judge your personal life, Mr. Hockney. I'm here to inform you that your wife has requested no visitors except approved family members. You're not on that list. I'm her husband, a fact she's aware of. Dr. Mosley stood. You'll be receiving divorce papers within the week. Until then, all communication goes through her lawyer. The door opened. General Cugin entered, his military bearing making the small room feel even smaller. General, Victor said, standing quickly, forcing a smile. I didn't realize you were here. Is Anina? My daughter is with your wife, the general said. They're becoming quite close. Victor's smile faltered. I don't understand. You used my daughter to access military contracts, the general said. Researched her background, targeted her deliberately, manipulated her into an affair to benefit your business interests. That's not. We have emails, Mr. Hockney. strategy documents, communications with your business partners discussing how the general's daughter would be a valuable asset. The general moved closer. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Anina knows this is ridiculous. Anina knows you're a liar, the general said. She's seen the evidence, and she's made a choice. The door opened again. Anina walked in, no longer wearing Victor's ring. It's over, Victor, she said quietly. Whatever we had, whatever I thought we had, it's done. Baby, they're manipulating you. Don't call me that. Anina's voice was ice. I saw the emails, the plans, the strategy sessions where you discussed me like I was a business acquisition. Her eyes filled with tears. Did you ever love me? Even a little? Victor looked at the three people staring at him with contempt and made a calculation. Deny everything or try to salvage the business relationships. Anina, what we had was real, he said. But yes, I also saw the professional benefits. Is that so wrong? Mixing business and pleasure. When the pleasure is a lie. Yes. Anina turned away. I'm testifying against you. Whatever they need, whatever helps destroy you, I'll provide it. Victor's control snapped. You'll regret this. All of you. I have lawyers, connections, resources. Had. The general corrected. Past tense. He pulled out his phone, showed Victor a news alert. Hockney development under federal investigation for bribery and fraud. Your offshore accounts have been frozen, the general said. Your business partners are cooperating with investigators. And the story about your proposal during your wife's surgery has gone viral. You're trending on Twitter. Number 1. Congratulations. Victor grabbed for the phone, saw the headlines, the comments, the complete destruction of his reputation happening in real time. This is illegal, he said desperately. You can't just... I'm a retired general with 40 years of connections, the general said. What I can do would terrify you. He gestured to the door. Leave. And if you come near my daughter, your wife, or your son again without explicit permission, I'll have you arrested. Victor looked at Anina one last time. You're making a mistake. No, Anina said. I'm correcting one. Victor left, his perfect life crumbling with every step. And in the NICU, Ilsa watched through the window, her son sleeping peacefully, and smiled. The war had truly begun. The video had 53 million views by the end of the week. But it wasn't just the proposal anymore. Someone had edited together a split-screen version. Victor on one knee on the left, surgical footage of an emergency C-section on the right. The timestamp running across both screens like a countdown to disaster. While she fought for life, he planned his future, read the caption. The internet had chosen sides. Hashtag Team Ilsa trended for 3 days straight. Supporters sent flowers to the hospital, donations to cover medical bills Ilsa didn't need help paying, and thousands of messages of support. A GoFundMe created without her permission raised $2 million in 48 hours. But hashtag Team Victor existed too. Men's rights activists claiming Ilsa had trapped him with a secret pregnancy. Conspiracy theorists suggesting she'd faked the emergency to gain sympathy. And a disturbing number of people who believed a man deserved happiness even if it meant leaving a pregnant wife. The division was so stark that news outlets ran segments analyzing it. What the Hockney scandal says about modern marriage became a trending topic across 3 continents. And through it all, Victor Hockney fought back. His first move was a press conference. Standing outside his office building, federal investigators were still inside, boxing up files. Victor addressed a carefully assembled crowd of reporters. "I want to address the video that's been circulating," he said, his voice heavy with practiced remorse. "Yes, I proposed to Anina Kujin while my wife was in the hospital. That timing was unfortunate and insensitive, and I deeply regret it. But what many people don't know is that my wife and I have been separated for over a year. We were living separate lives, pursuing separate futures. The pregnancy was a surprise to both of us. Ilsa chose not to tell me about it, and I respect her reasons for that privacy." Lies. Smooth, carefully crafted lies. "I'm not the villain this story has made me out to be," Victor continued. "I'm a man who fell in love with someone new after my marriage ended. The fact that the legal divorce wasn't finalized doesn't change the emotional reality." A reporter shouted, "But you were living together. Your wife thought you were still married." "My wife and I had an arrangement," Victor said. "We maintained appearances for business reasons while living separate personal lives. I won't air our private agreements publicly, but I can assure you, Ilsa was aware of the situation." More lies, but effective ones. Within an hour, the narrative began to shift. "Separated couple's private arrangement goes public," read one headline. "Wife hid pregnancy from estranged husband," read another. The tide was turning. In her hospital room, Ilsa watched the press conference with the general and Anina. "He's good," Ilsa said. "I'll give him that. He's rewriting the whole story." "Let him," the general said. "We have something better than stories. We have evidence." He pulled out a new folder, this one thicker than the previous ones. "My investigators have been busy. Victor's business isn't just ethically questionable. It's criminal." He spread documents across Ilsa's hospital bed. "The Riverside development, the one he needed your father's connections for," the general said, looking at Ilsa. "Built on land acquired through fraudulent appraisals. He paid an assessor to undervalue the property, bought it cheap, then had it reassessed at market rate. Profit of $40 million through fraud. The military housing project," he continued, looking at Anina. "He bribed 3 city council members to approve zoning changes. We have wire transfers, recorded conversations, everything. And this," the general pulled out a final document, "is the most damning. Victor's been running a shell company in the Cayman Islands, funneling money through fake subsidiaries to avoid taxes. We're talking about $80 million in undeclared income over 5 years." Ilsa looked at the evidence. "This is enough to send him to prison. For 20 years minimum," the general confirmed. "But I want to be strategic about how we release it. One piece at a time. Keep him bleeding." "Why not just turn everything over to the authorities now?" Anina asked. "Because I want him to suffer first," the general said bluntly. "I want him to lose everything: reputation, business, freedom. Slowly enough that he feels every second of it." Ilsa should have been disturbed by the coldness in the general's voice. But instead, she felt something like kinship. "What's the next move?" she asked. "We leak the tax fraud," the general said. "Anonymously. Let the IRS start their own investigation. While Victor's fighting that, we release evidence of the bribery. Then the land fraud. Each revelation will chip away at his credibility, his resources, his will to fight." "Death by 1,000 cuts," Anina said quietly. "Exactly." A nurse knocked and entered. "Mrs. Hockney, your son's pediatrician wants to speak with you about his progress." Ilsa's face softened immediately. "I'll be right there." After the nurse left, Ilsa turned to her allies. Before we continue destroying my husband, I need to ask, what happens to my son in all this? He didn't choose to have Victor as a father. Your son will be protected, the general said. That's non-negotiable. Victor's crimes are his own. The child is innocent. But the media won't see it that way, Ilsa said. They'll hound him. Son of the man who proposed to his mistress while his wife was dying. That's the headline that will follow him forever. Then we control the narrative better, Anina said. We make Victor the villain and you the hero. Your son becomes the innocent victim of his father's crimes, raised by a strong mother who survived betrayal. That's still reducing him to a news story, Ilsa said. Every child of famous parents is reduced to a story, the general said gently. The question is whether it's a story of shame or resilience. We're choosing resilience. Ilsa nodded slowly. Okay, but the moment this affects my son's health or safety, we stop. Agreed. Agreed. The general and Anina said in unison. The tax fraud story broke on a Tuesday. Anonymous tip leads to IRS investigation of Hackney development, read the headlines. By Wednesday, 3 of Victor's business partners had publicly severed ties with him. By Thursday, 2 banks had frozen his lines of credit, pending the outcome of the investigation. And by Friday, Victor was desperate enough to do something monumentally stupid. He showed up at Ilsa's hospital room at 2 a.m., somehow bypassing security, and stood at the foot of her bed while she slept. Ilsa woke to find him there, backlit by the hallway light, and screamed. Security arrived within seconds. The general had arranged for private guards after Victor's press conference. But the damage was done. I just wanted to talk, Victor said as guards restrained him. Ilsa, please, we can work this out. You broke into my hospital room at 2 a.m., Ilsa said, her voice shaking. After I explicitly said no contact. I'm trying to save our family. We don't have a family, Ilsa shouted. You destroyed that when you chose her over us. The guards dragged Victor out. Within an hour, Ilsa had a restraining order. And by morning, video of Victor being removed from the hospital, recorded by a visitor who happened to be in the hallway, had gone viral. Hashtag Team Victor lost significant ground that day. But Victor's desperation led to something none of them had anticipated. He hired a private investigator of his own. And that investigator discovered something the general had thought was buried too deeply to ever surface. 3 days after the hospital incident, Victor held another press conference. I've recently learned some disturbing information about the people trying to destroy my reputation, he began. General Louis Cugin is being portrayed as a hero, a protective father defending his daughter's honor. Victor's smile was sharp. But what the general hasn't mentioned is that 15 years ago, he was court-martialed for unauthorized military action that resulted in civilian casualties. The case was sealed, the records buried, but I have sources. He held up documents, redacted but official-looking. 23 civilians died because General Cugin ignored direct orders and launched a strike on what he claimed was an enemy position. The military covered it up to avoid an international incident. But the bodies are still buried overseas. The reporters erupted with questions. The general isn't a hero, Victor continued. He's a war criminal. And now he's using his connections and resources to wage a personal vendetta against me because I fell in love with his daughter. Back in Ilsa's hospital room, the general watched the press conference with an expression carved from stone. Is it true? Ilsa asked quietly. The general was silent for a long moment. It's complicated. That's not a denial. It was a war zone, the general said. Intelligence said the building was an enemy stronghold. I made a tactical decision based on the information I had. Later, we discovered the intelligence was wrong. His voice was hollow. 23 people died. Families, children, and I gave the order. You were court-martialed? Anina asked, her voice small. She hadn't known. Yes, found not guilty due to intelligence failure, but the stain remained. That's why I retired early. Why I've spent 15 years trying to make amends through charity work and advocacy. He looked at them both. I'm not a hero. I'm a man who made a terrible mistake and has been living with the consequences ever since. Ilsa absorbed this. Victor will use this to discredit everything we've said about him. Yes, the general agreed. He'll say you're manipulating me, controlling the narrative, that your evidence is fabricated. Yes. So what do we do? Anina asked. The general stood, straightened his shoulders with military precision. We tell the truth. All of it. My mistakes, Victor's crimes, everything. And we let the public decide who they believe. That's a gamble, Ilsa said. War is always a gamble, the general said. But I didn't survive 40 years of combat by hiding from the fight. He pulled out his phone, made a call. This is General Louis Cugin. I'm requesting an interview with every major news outlet. I want to discuss the court-martial, the civilian casualties, and my current involvement in the Hockney case. He hung up and looked at Ilsa and Anina. If we're going to win this, we need to control our own story. No more hiding. No more secrets. We put everything on the table and dare Victor to match our honesty. And if the public turns against us? Anina asked. Then we lose, the general said simply. But at least we'll lose with our integrity intact. Ilsa thought about her son, sleeping in the NICU, about the life she wanted to give him, about the kind of mother she wanted to be. Okay, she said. No more secrets. We fight clean and let Victor fight dirty. At least we'll be able to look our children in the eye. The general nodded. Then we go public. Tomorrow. All of us. Together. And in his penthouse apartment, Victor Hockney watched the news coverage of his bombshell revelation and smiled. He'd landed a solid hit. But he had no idea that the general's confession would be the move that ultimately destroyed him. Because the public loved a repentant sinner far more than they loved a man who'd never admitted fault. And the war was about to enter its final, brutal phase. The joint interview aired on national television at 8 p.m. on Sunday. The general sat between Ilsa and Anina, all three facing the country's most respected investigative journalist, Diana Cross. Let's address the elephant in the room, Diana said. General Cugin, you were court-martialed 15 years ago for an operation that resulted in civilian deaths. Why should the public trust your judgment now? The general didn't flinch. They shouldn't trust my judgment blindly. They should examine the evidence I've presented and make their own decisions. My past mistakes don't erase Victor Hockney's current crimes. But Mr. Hockney claims you're conducting a personal vendetta. I am, the general admitted. He used my daughter. He's a criminal. And yes, I want to see him punished. But personal vendetta doesn't mean the evidence is false. Every document, every recording, every witness statement can be independently verified. Diana turned to Anina. You were engaged to Victor. Why turn against him? Because I learned the truth, Anina said quietly. He researched me before we ever met. Targeted me because of my father's connections. Every intimate moment, every promise, Every "I love you" was calculated manipulation. "And you, Mrs. Hockney," Diana said to Ilse, "you hid your pregnancy for 7 months. Why?" Ilse hesitated. This was the question she'd been dreading. "Because I discovered Victor's affair and was gathering evidence for divorce," she said. "But there's something else. Something I only learned 3 days ago." She pulled out a folder new documents the general's investigators had uncovered. "Victor didn't just marry me and cheat on me," Ilse said, her voice shaking. "He married me specifically to steal my inheritance." The studio went silent. "My parents died in a house fire when I was 6, Ilse continued. "I was told there was no money, no assets, nothing left. That's why I went into foster care. But that was a lie." She showed documents to the camera. "My parents owned a software company in the 1990s. Small, but they developed a data compression algorithm that became industry standard. When they died, the company was worth approximately $50 million. Where did that money go?" Diana asked. "To a trust controlled by their business partner, who was supposed to manage it until I turned 25. But the business partner embezzled everything, declared bankruptcy, and disappeared." Ilse pulled out a photograph. A younger Victor standing beside a man in his 60s. That business partner was Victor's father, Thomas Hockney. He stole my inheritance, faked his death, and relocated overseas. And when Victor came of age, his father gave him the money to start Hockney Development. The camera zoomed in on the documents, corporate filings, bank transfers, DNA evidence proving Thomas Hockney was alive and living in the Cayman Islands. Victor built his entire empire on money stolen from an orphaned 6-year-old girl, Ilse said. And when he realized I might eventually discover the truth, he married me, made me fall in love with him, kept me close so he could control the narrative if I ever started asking questions. Diana was speechless. The crew behind the camera had stopped moving. "You have proof of this?" Diana finally asked. "Financial forensics traced the money from my parents' company through 3 shell corporations to Thomas Hockney, and then to Victor's initial business funding," the general said. "It's all documented. This means Victor's entire fortune legally belongs to Ilse," the general finished. "He's not just a cheater and a tax fraud. He's a thief who stole a child's inheritance and then married her to cover his tracks." Diana looked at Ilse. "Did you know any of this when you married him?" "I had no idea," Ilse said. "I thought he loved me, thought I'd finally found someone who chose me." Her voice broke. "But I was just the final piece in his father's con. Marry the orphan, keep her dependent and grateful, and she'll never question where the money came from." The interview went viral before it even finished airing. Within hours, federal prosecutors announced they were opening a criminal investigation into the Hockney family's business practices dating back 30 years. Thomas Hockney was arrested in the Cayman Islands, and Victor's world didn't just crack. It shattered completely. But Victor had one final card to play, and it was going to break everyone. Victor's counterattack came 48 hours after the interview aired. A lawsuit filed in family court, requesting emergency full custody of his son. The grounds: Ilse was mentally unstable, a danger to the child, and had demonstrated a pattern of deception and manipulation. She hid the pregnancy for 7 months. Victor's lawyer argued in the emergency hearing, refused to inform the father of his child's existence, underwent high-risk medical procedures without consulting him. This demonstrates severe judgment issues. Ilse sat in the courtroom, her hands shaking, as Victor's legal team painted her as a disturbed woman using her baby as a weapon. Mrs. Hockney has a documented history of abandonment trauma from her time in foster care. The lawyer continued, "Our psychiatric expert will testify that this trauma manifests as controlling, manipulative behavior. She's projecting her childhood fears onto this child, and it's creating an unhealthy environment." "Your Honor," Ilsa's lawyer objected, "this is character assassination, not evidence." "We have evidence," Victor's lawyer said, pulling out documents. Medical records showing Mrs. Hockney refused certain treatments during pregnancy against doctor recommendations. Testimony from hospital staff that she's been unusually possessive of the infant. And this, he displayed photos of Ilsa's hospital room, taken without her knowledge. In them, she looked exhausted, disheveled, holding her son while crying. "A mother in distress," Victor's lawyer said, "unable to cope, potentially suffering from postpartum psychosis." The judge examined the photos. "Mrs. Hockney, have you been evaluated for postpartum depression?" "I know, but I'm not." "Your Honor, we're requesting immediate psychiatric evaluation and temporary custody transfer to Mr. Hockney pending the results," Victor's lawyer said. Ilsa felt the room spinning. They were going to take her baby. After everything, Victor was going to win by claiming she was crazy. "The child is still in NICU," Ilsa's lawyer argued desperately. "He requires specialized medical care." "Mr. Hockney can provide that care," the judge said. "And given the serious allegations, I'm ordering a 72-hour psychiatric hold and evaluation for Mrs. Hockney. The child will remain in hospital care with Mr. Hockney granted visitation rights." "No!" Ilsa screamed. "You can't!" Security moved toward her, and Ilsa realized with horror that her outburst had just confirmed everything Victor's lawyer had said about her being unstable. The general grabbed her arm. "Don't. You're making it worse." But it was already worse than Ilsa could have imagined. Victor had found the one move that could destroy her completely, and he was smiling. The psychiatric evaluation took place in a sterile hospital room with Dr. Patricia Vaughn, a court-appointed psychiatrist with 20 years of experience. "Mrs. Hockney, tell me about your relationship with your son," Dr. Vaughn said. Ilsa had been prepared to be defensive, to fight against accusations of instability. But something in Dr. Vaughn's kind eyes made her stop. "I love him," Ilsa said simply. "He's the only thing that's ever been truly mine. Tell me more about that." And Ilsa did. She talked about foster care, about feeling unwanted, about marrying Victor because he made her feel chosen, about discovering the affair and the inheritance theft and realizing she'd never been chosen at all, just targeted. "You've experienced significant trauma," Dr. Vaughn said, "both childhood and recent. How are you coping?" "I'm angry," Ilsa admitted. "Furious. Some days I want to destroy Victor so completely that he understands what he took from me. But when I hold my son," her voice softened, "when I hold him, I remember that revenge isn't the goal. Protecting him is." Dr. Vaughn made notes. "That's a very healthy distinction." After 3 hours of evaluation, Dr. Vaughn delivered her report to the judge. "Mrs. Hockney is experiencing situational stress consistent with betrayal trauma, premature birth, and ongoing legal battles. But she shows no signs of psychosis, no danger to herself or others, and demonstrates appropriate maternal bonding." Dr. Vaughn looked directly at Victor. "The custody filing appears to be strategic litigation rather than genuine concern for the child's welfare." The judge's expression hardened. "Custody remains with Mrs. Hockney." Mr. Hockney, you'll have supervised visitation only. Victor's face went white. This is dismissed, the judge said. Outside the courtroom, the general was waiting with a smile. We have him, he said. His father just agreed to testify against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. The final piece had fallen into place. The federal courthouse was packed for Victor Hockney's trial. Cameras lined the streets outside. The public gallery filled within minutes. And Victor sat at the defendant's table, his expensive suit unable to hide the defeated slump of his shoulders. The prosecution's case was devastating. Thomas Hockney testified first, his voice shaking as he confessed to embezzling Ilsa's inheritance and funneling it to his son. Victor knew, Thomas said. He knew from the beginning that the money wasn't clean. When he decided to marry Ilsa, he called it closing the loop, making sure she'd never have grounds to reclaim what was hers. Financial experts traced every dollar from Ilsa's parents' company through shell corporations to Victor's business empire. $87 million, all built on stolen money. The bribery charges came next. 3 city council members testified about cash payments and luxury vacations in exchange for zoning approvals. The evidence was irrefutable: wire transfers, recorded conversations, emails Victor thought were encrypted. But the moment that broke the internet came when Anina took the stand. Mr. Hockney researched me for 3 months before we ever met, she testified, her voice steady despite tears. He knew my father's position, his connections, the contracts he could influence. I wasn't a girlfriend. I was an asset acquisition. She pulled out her phone, showed the court text messages Victor had sent to a business partner. The general's daughter is on board. Military contracts are as good as ours. Just need to keep her happy until the deal's close. The courtroom gasped. Did you love her? The prosecutor asked Victor during cross-examination. Victor's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed it. Answer the question, Mr. Hockney. Did you love Anina Cugin? Or was she always part of a business strategy? Victor looked at Anina, at the woman he'd proposed to while his wife fought for life. And in his eyes, she saw the truth she'd been denying for months. I cared about her, Victor said carefully. That's not the same as love, the prosecutor said. In business, nothing is about love. It's about mutual benefit. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. But the damage was done. Victor had just admitted, under oath and on camera, that Anina had been nothing more than a business transaction. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Victor to 18 years in federal prison. Additionally, the court ordered full restitution of the $87 million to Ilsa, plus damages. Mr. Hockney, the judge said, you built an empire on theft, lies, and the exploitation of vulnerable people. You married a woman whose inheritance you'd stolen. You manipulated another woman for business gain. And when your pregnant wife needed you most, you were proposing to your mistress. The judge looked at Ilsa, sitting in the gallery with her son in her arms. Mrs. Hockney has shown remarkable grace throughout this ordeal. She's entitled to everything you own, every asset, every property, every dollar. And I'm granting her sole custody of your son, with a recommendation that your parental rights be terminated. Victor's face crumbled. Please, not my son. You gave up your son the moment you chose a proposal over a hospital, the judge said. You're a father in biology only. This court recognizes Mrs. Hockney as the sole parent. As Victor was led away in handcuffs, Ilsa felt the general's hand on her shoulder. It's over, he said quietly. And for the first time in months, Ilse believed it. Justice had been served. 1 year later, Ilse stood in the playground of the community center she'd built with the restitution money. The Second Chances Foundation provided support for foster children, single mothers, and survivors of domestic manipulation. $87 million transformed into hope for thousands. Her son, she'd named him Thomas, reclaiming the name from Victor's father and giving it new meaning, played in a supervised toddler area, healthy and thriving despite his premature start. He's gotten so big, Anina said, joining Ilse on the bench. Over the past year, an unlikely friendship had formed between the wife and the former mistress. Both had been Victor's victims in different ways. Both had survived. "How's the new job?" Ilse asked. "Good. Challenging." Anina had taken a position with a nonprofit focused on preventing relationship manipulation and financial abuse. "I'm using my experience to help others recognize the warning signs I missed." The general approached, carrying ice cream for Thomas. Since the trial, he'd become a fixture in their lives. A grandfather figure to the boy, a protective presence for both women. "I have news," the general said. Victor's parental rights were officially terminated this morning. He appealed from prison. Lost. Ilse felt a weight lift. "So it's really over." "It's really over," the general confirmed. Thomas laughed, chasing bubbles another child was blowing, and Ilse marveled at how something so beautiful had emerged from such pain. "I thought this would feel like winning," Ilse said quietly, "but it just feels like peace." "Peace is better than winning," Anina said. "Peace means you've healed." And looking at her son, her friend, her unlikely family, Ilse realized she had healed. The girl who'd grown up unwanted had built a family from ashes. The woman who'd been betrayed had found strength in survival. The mother who'd fought for her child had won everything that mattered. Not revenge, not victory, but a second chance at life. And this time, surrounded by people who actually loved her, Ilse was finally truly home. This story left us speechless. What did you think? Drop your reactions in the comments below. Did Victor get what he deserved? Are you glad Ilse and Anina found friendship? Let us know. And if this story moved you, subscribe to the channel for more incredible tales of justice, redemption, and triumph over betrayal. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments. We love our global family. Remember, betrayal may wound, but it doesn't have to destroy. Justice may be slow, but it's inevitable. And second chances, they're for those brave enough to fight for them. See you in the next story.